Hello, my name is Tiana Kozart. I'm a freshman biology major from Washington.
Hi, my name is Elaine DeBlanc. I'm a freshman marketing major from Katy, Texas.
Hello, my name is Jalen Field, a sophomore supply chain management major from Birmingham, Alabama.
Hi, my name is Thomas V. I'm a senior TV and film major, sports management minor from Oakland, California.
Hi, everyone. My name is Steve Texas, and I'm a sophomore finance major from Boston, Massachusetts.
My name is Ariana Wright. I am a freshman political science major from Michigan.
Hi, my name is Kirsten Coleman. I am a sophomore criminology and psychology double major from Nashville, Tennessee, by way of Atlanta, Georgia.
Hello, my name is Nneka Amagwali. I'm a senior public relations major, biology minor from Long Island, New York.
Hi, my name is Nicholas Opara. I'm an international business major from Washington State.
Hi, my name is Che Yule. I'm a freshman finance major from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Hi, my name is Cameron Adams. I am a graduating senior math major and secondary education minor from Los Angeles, California.
Hi, my name is Nyla Rogers. I'm a sophomore computer science major from Brooklyn, New York.
Hi, my name is Dion McLaughlin. I'm currently an econ major here at Howard University. I hail from Oakland, California. I'll be discussing this man behind me, who is actually Jeremy Bentham, a great philosopher.
Hi, my name is Jamie Robinson. I'm a freshman public relations major from Portland, Oregon.
And today, this is Group B, and our topic of discussion is Jeremy Bentham and Immanuel Kant on ethics and society.
So, Jeremy Bentham's views on ethics and society begin with the understanding of consequentialist moral theories and determining what things are good and evil. One of the most common consequentialist theories is utilitarian theory. Bentham is considered one of the founders of utilitarianism, and Bentham actually defended different versions of utilitarian perspectives rather than the original belief that the welfare or happiness of sentient beings had non-derivative value and courage, while knowledge, love, and money had value. Bentham identified happiness with pleasure in the absence of pain, and he proceeded to develop a type of calculus as a method for calculating the pleasure and pain produced by different actions. By calculating pleasure and pain, Bentham aimed to provide a different or efficient way of evaluating the moral consequences of actions. His theory of utilitarianism, called hedonistic act utilitarianism, supposes that what makes an act right or wrong is the extent to which it increases pleasure or decreases pain. Bentham believed that some pleasures are higher than others, and Bentham saw happiness as a result of the pleasures and pains felt. To this day, Jeremy Bentham is a foundational figure in ethical philosophy, mainly through his development of utilitarianism. And at the core of his ethical framework lies the consequentialist belief that the goodness or badness of an action is determined solely by its outcomes. Utilitarianism, one of the most prominent consequentialist theories, asserts that actions should maximize overall happiness or pleasure and minimize pain or suffering for the most significant number of individuals. Bentham's contribution to utilitarianism is profound, as he redefined and defended various versions of this perspective, emphasizing the primacy of happiness as the ultimate value. Unlike theories that attribute non-derivative values to virtues like courage or knowledge, Bentham identified happiness with pleasure in the absence of pain. Central to Bentham's utilitarianism is his development of the hedonic calculus, a systematic method for measuring pleasure and pain generated by different actions. By calculating the pleasure and pain, Bentham aimed to provide a practical and efficient means of evaluating the moral consequences of actions. Within his framework of utilitarianism, Bentham theorized that an act's moral rightness or wrongness centers on its capacity to maximize pleasure or minimize pain. However, Bentham also recognized distinctions within pleasure, asserting that some pleasures are higher than others. This acknowledgement suggests that happiness, according to Bentham, is not solely dependent on the quantity of pleasure experienced, but also on the nature and quality of those pleasures. In spirit, Bentham's utilitarian perspective offers a widespread approach to ethics in society, ingrained in maximizing happiness and minimizing suffering. His emphasis on pleasure and pain as the ultimate factors of value, coupled with the development of hedonic calculus, continues to shape ethical conversation and inform discussions on moral decision-making. Through his groundbreaking work, Bentham laid the groundwork for the evolution of utilitarianism and its enduring impact on moral philosophy. Thank you.
So I will first start off by going into discussing Kant. So in exploring the ethical frameworks of Jeremy Bentham and Immanuel Kant, we delve into the profound contrast between into the ethics of deontology and also the utilitarianism of focuses of Betham. So while Betham's focuses on outcomes of actions, Kant's philosophy centers on intrinsic values of intentions. Kant's position is that moral worth of an action is not determined by its consequences, but by the intention behind it. This foundational concept of Kant's ethics often refers to and asserts that actions are inherently right or wrong, regardless of their outcomes. A main point in Kant's moral philosophy is the idea that humans possess rational autonomy and are endowed with the faculty of reason. He admits that we always act from intentions, driven by motives and goals. According to Kant, our intentions serve as the moral compass by which the goodness or badness of an action is judged, which prioritizes the maximization of utility or happiness. Kant's ethics emphasizes the importance of integrity and the moral law. At the heart of Kant's ethical frameworks lie the concepts of categorical initiative, which is essentially driven by motives and goals. Kant articulates the principle as following: act only accordingly to the maxim whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. So in essence, the categorical impact that Kant challenges individuals to evaluate their actions based on whether they can rationally will them to be universal laws governing all rational agents. For Kant, the moral worth of an action is contingent upon the universality of its underlying principles. If one's intentions cannot be willed as a universal law without contradiction, then they are deemed morally flawed. This entails a rigorous examination of the intentions behind our actions and their compatibility with universal moral principles. Kant asserts that actions motivated by good intentions, which can be universally willed, are inherently morally good, regardless of their outcomes. Conversely, actions stemming from evil intentions, which cannot be universally willed without contradiction, are morally wrong. Kant emphasizes on the primacy of intentionality over outcomes, which distinguishes his ethical framework from others. While utilitarianism evaluates the morality of action based on their consequence and the maximization of utility, Kant's ethics places a significant importance on the rational autonomy and moral agency of individuals. By prioritizing the examination of intentions and their conformity to universal moral principles, Kant provides a compelling alternative to different approaches to ethics. So in conclusion, Immanuel Kant's ethical philosophy offers a very diverse framework for understanding the moral dimensions of human actions. By shifting the focus from outcomes to intention, Kant's ethics underscores the intrinsic value of moral agency and rational autonomy. Through the categorical imperative, Kant challenges us to evaluate the universality of our intentions and their alignments with moral principles. In this way, Kant invites us to cultivate a deeper understanding of the ethical foundations that govern our society.
I'm going to be talking about Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant is a renowned philosopher from the 18th century, and he is best known for his ethical theory concerning the concept of moral autonomy and duty. According to an argument made by Kant, one's actions can be considered morally correct if they are done out of duty. Otherwise, they fall short of this ideal. This contrasts with the idea of morality being dependent on perceptions of consequences or personal inclinations. Kant introduces and deliberates about the idea primarily in his categorical imperative, a small section of a 1785 work called Groundwork of the Metaphysics of Morals. In this work, the concept of the categorical imperative is expressed in its originally intended wording. Act only according to that maxim whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law, from Kant, page 30. Concerning the concept of society, Kant preached the importance of rule of law and individual autonomy. Rather than treat people as a means to an end, Kant made a point to overstate the need for people to be treated as an end unto themselves in a just society. His belief in the intrinsic value of others and his belief against the exploitation of others forms the basis of his kingdom of ends. The concept of a kingdom of ends encapsulates a society whose members are autonomous and are members of a moral community that respects autonomy.
Bentham's moral philosophy is based on utilitarianism, which evaluates the actions based on their consequences. He believed that the right action is the one that maximizes overall happiness or pleasure and minimizes pain for the greatest number of people. Kant's moral philosophy is grounded in formalism. He emphasized the intrinsic value of moral principles and believed that the process of reaching a moral decision matters more than the outcome. According to Kant, moral actions are guided by a reason and universal principles. In a situation where a doctor has a limited supply of life-saving drug and there are 3 patients in critical condition, each needing the drug to survive, the doctor must decide who receives the drug. In this scenario, Bentham would evaluate the situation based on overall happiness or pleasure and overall pain. You might consider the number of lives saved and the quality of life after surviving. Bentham would likely prioritize saving more lives, even if it means sacrificing one patient for the greater good. Kant, in this scenario, would focus on the moral process and duty. You might consider the principle of treating each person as an end in themselves, not merely as a means to an end. And he may pose the question, would the doctor's action be acceptable if everyone followed the same rule? Kant would emphasize the doctor's duty to treat each patient with respect and dignity, and that the doctor should not sacrifice any patient for the greater good.
Found his thoughts to be interesting, though morally wrong, because of his approach to thinking everyone should function on a collective basis rather than an individualistic mindset. We find it interesting because he believes it will be moral for people in a society to give up on self-interest, which is counterintuitive to human nature. An example that would describe utilitarianism is a hospital with 5 people. 1 needs a lung, 1 a heart, 1 a liver, and 2 need a kidney. If there are a homeless person on the street who had a match to every single one of these, a utilitarian would suggest the homeless man donate all of his organs because it will produce the greatest good for the greatest number. The other portion of utilitarianism is to pursue pleasure and happiness for ourselves and others, which we found to be challenging and overly simplistic. Not every scenario will lead to pleasure for everyone and can indirectly affect others. For example, suppose a city is struggling economically and decides to implement a large clothing factory. In that case, it needs to be built over a long-lasting historic Chinatown with an entire Asian population, small businesses, and other things. The utilitarian view would be to make the factory so people can have jobs and employment, which would breed happiness. However, this raises important moral concerns regarding the erasure of cultural heritage and the effects on the social and emotional fabric of the community, which would surely feel hopeless and deeply bereaved. We find that Bentham's utilitarianism brings up important questions about fairness and treating everyone equally in society. Bentham's philosophy frequently takes the side of the majority, sometimes at the expense of injustice toward the minority. In situations where the rights and well-being of the few are in conflict with the happiness of many. The utilitarian feature raises questions and demands discussion, implying that there is much more to the ethical terrain than just balancing happiness and suffering.
On the contrary, I saw Immanuel Kant's robust framework on ethics and society interesting as well, rather because his views are more reasonable and moral. And I say this because his framework, known as Kantian ethics, highlights universal moral principles from a deontological perspective. That is, he considers the concept of goodwill when arguing about morality. Kant utilizes imperatives as a basis of his main philosophical theory on ethics and society, in which he highlights 2 of them. That is hypothetical imperatives and categorical imperatives. In simple terms, hypothetical imperatives are conditional commands of reason, while categorical imperatives are absolute moral commands of reason. And in other words, hypothetical imperatives come in the form of a conditional if-then statement, which we'll also kind of see in math too, just as a fun fact. But it will come in the form of, like, you have 2 sentences, A and B, where A is the hypothesis of your if-then statement and B is the conclusion of your if-then statement. And it will come in the form of, if you want or need A, then you ought to do B. And for example, if someone were to say, if you want to do well on a test, then you should study a lot, then they would be setting a hypothetical imperative over another's will. And with that statement, the act of studying a lot would be good, and that would be like the condition for a person solely if they want or need to do well on a test. That's like the constraint behind them doing well on the test. And on the other hand, the categorical imperatives, they come in the form of absolute commands, whereas you have just one sentence, A, and it'll come in the form of do A, or you ought to, or should do A, or should not do A. For example, if someone were to say, thou shalt make no false promises, then that would be them setting a categorical imperative over someone's will. And with that statement, the action of not making false promises, or I guess lying to people in a sense, that would be an action that is good within itself and that is necessary for a person to will for moral reasons. And when comparing these two, categorical imperatives are more genuinely moral because they're not contingent on the wants and needs of like a person, like what they like or whatever, what they want, like hypothetical imperatives are. However, both are supportive of Kant's idea of humans having rational autonomy or motives, which can then be used to measure like how moral their intentions are through the single categorical imperative of acting only on that maxim or principle through which they can also at the same time will that it should be a universal law. This is why Kant's philosophical theory strikes me more, because it considers morality from an individualistic perspective, rather than from like a set of like a selected collective perspective that is determined by a measure of maximum pleasure. In other words, Kant's idealistic views of ethics in society claim universal morality from individual morals, whereas Bentham's claim universal morality from overall universal pleasure.
Immanuel Kant, who was a German philosopher who had an ethical theory called Kantian ethics, which revolved around Kant's concept of the categorical imperative. That was a duty-bound ethical system similar to religious moral codes like the Ten Commandments. It advocates for universal moral principles that apply to all people in all situations, aiming for consistency in behavior across diverse circumstances. This system prioritizes duty over personal interest, which is exemplified by Kant's notion of saving someone drowning, regardless of their worth or the possessions they may have. Kantian ethics requires individuals to act in a manner they would want everyone else to act across all circumstances, forming what Kant termed the kingdom of ends. Kant says to do unto others what you want to be done by others. Critics argue that the moral rules Kant proposes ignore situational context, suggesting moral rules may not always apply universally and that they may require a more flexible approach to ethics. While I think that moral rules can be a useful guide for making moral decisions, I also think that it is very important to consider situational context and the specific circumstances to each case. Thank you.
Kant's beliefs offer a compelling perspective on ethics that prioritizes universal moral principles that intrinsic value of individuals, which may find more robust and enduring than Bentham's utilitarian approach focused solely on maximizing happiness. Immanuel Kant is an influential thinker whose ideas have greatly shaped our understanding of ethics in society. Jeremy Bentham believed in utilitarianism, which means he thought that the best action is the one that maximizes happiness for the greatest number of people. On the other hand, Immanuel Kant emphasized the importance of moral principles and universal rules. He argued that ethical decisions should be based on reason and duty rather than consequences. Kant's approach to ethics stresses the inherent value of each individual and the importance of treating others with respect and dignity. His ideas have had a profound impact on moral philosophy, encouraging people to consider the rights and autonomy of individuals in societal structures. Kant offers valuable insights into how we can navigate ethical dilemmas and contribute positively to society. Kant's ideas continue to inspire discussions and debates, guiding us in making ethical choices that promote the common good while respecting the rights and dignity of every person.
And on the topic of ethics in society, as a group, we have decided the philosopher who aligns with us as a collective is Immanuel Kant. We came to this agreement because of how Kant spoke about his intentions regarding his beliefs in ethics. Kant focused on the intention of the human interactions and actions. It was less important to the outcome of the action and more critical to whether the intention was good or bad. As previously mentioned, our intentions act as a moral compass, guiding us to decide whether we believe something is good or not. He also mentions a considerable part of the actions, aside from the intention, is motive and goals. We agree that this concept is how humans behave as we determine the morality of the action by focusing on the action's main principle rather than the deed itself or the aftermath. We judge actions based on personal morals, laws, and integrity. Now on to Steve and why we decided against Bentham's belief in society and ethics.
As a group, we found that Bentham's utilitarian ethics carry some inherent drawbacks. First, it seems to prioritize majority happiness without enough consideration for the rights and interests of minority groups or individuals. By focusing solely on maximizing overall utility, Bentham's utilitarianism can justify actions that violate the rights or liberties of certain individuals if it leads to greater happiness for the majority. This approach neglects the importance of protecting fundamental human rights and freedoms, potentially leading to the oppression or marginalization of vulnerable populations. Additionally, Bentham's emphasis on quantifying pleasure and pain raises questions about the feasibility and accuracy of such measurements. Human experiences of happiness and suffering are extremely complex, making it difficult to accurately quantify and compare them on a universal scale. This oversimplification of human experiences may lead to ethical judgments that fail to capture the nuances of individual human being. Furthermore, Bentham's principle of utility can be criticized for its potential to justify morally questionable actions through the calculation of utility. This consequentialist approach to ethics can undermine principles of justice and fairness, as actions are evaluated solely based on their outcomes rather than their intrinsic moral worth. In essence, while Bentham's utilitarianism offers an equation for moral decision-making, its emphasis on gross happiness and quantifiable outcomes overlooks the complexities of human morality and may lead to unjust or morally unsatisfying conclusions.
Kant's emphasis on intentions and motives, respect for human dignity, and focus on moral principles are some of the reasons we find his argument to be more persuasive. Deontological ethics, as held by Kant, emphasizes the significance of moral obligations and principles that are relevant to all rational creatures. This emphasis offers a solid and dependable foundation for moral decision-making, independent of the particular situations or outcomes. In Kant's philosophy, seeing people as goals in and of themselves rather than only as means to an end and upholding human dignity are highly valued concepts. As stated prior, the viewpoint is consistent with modern concepts of human rights and social justice, advocating for a community that recognizes the inherent dignity of each individual. According to Kant's categorical imperative, people should think about whether their activities may be universalized without causing conflicts, especially in light of the concept of universality. This idea promotes moral decision making that is imperitable, equitable, and appropriate for every person.
As a group, we firmly are in favor of Kant's ethical framework over Benthamian's Altruism. Kant's focus on intentions, respect for human dignity, and moral principle really struck a chord with us as a group. His synodical ethics offer a strong basis for moral decision-making, an emphasis on universal moral principles, and the inherent values of every person. On the other hand, Hume's Arthurian approach, which prioritizes maximalism overall happiness, gives us a pause. While it may seem attractive initially, we see the drawbacks in its narrow focus on outcomes. By solely emphasizing and integrating only happiness, there's a risk of oversimplifying the human experience and reaching moral questionable conclusions. Benthamian's method of quantifying pleasure and pain also seems problematic, as it may not fully capture the complexities of an individual well-being. In summary, our preference for Kant's ethical philosophy reflects our dedication to principles that prioritize the individual rights, dignity, and the universal moral principles. We're confident that Kant's framework lays a solid foundation for ethical decision-making in society, guiding us towards a more just and equitable world.
In this discussion, we looked at the ethical frameworks of Jeremy Bentham and Immanuel Kant, two great philosophers whose ideas have a tremendous impact on our understanding of ethics and society. Bentham, a utilitarian, maintained that the morality of an action should be determined by its effects, specifically its ability to maximize happiness while minimizing suffering for the greater number of people. In contrast, Kant presented a deontological approach to ethics, arguing that the morality of an action is determined by its adherence to universal moral standards regardless of the outcome. Bentham's utilitarianism provides a persuasive ethical stance, emphasizing the significance of enhancing general happiness and well-being. By emphasizing the consequences of actions, Bentham hoped to create a practical and objective foundation for moral decision-making. His creation of the hedonic calculus, the tool for calculating pleasure and suffering, demonstrates his desire to quantify the effects of activities on human welfare. However, Bentham's utilitarianism has been challenged for having the capacity to justify actions that violate individual rights and liberties in the name of community happiness. Critics say that the consequentialist approach ignores persons' intrinsic value and the importance of protecting their right and dignity. On the other hand, Kant's deontological ethics prioritizes an action's intentions as well as conformance to universal moral norms. Kant contended that moral actions are those committed out of a sense of responsibility and in conformity with logical principles, rather than because of the consequences they generate. His concept of the categorical imperative, which forces individuals to act solely on principles that may be universal laws, illustrates his belief in the value of moral consistency and universality. Kant's emphasis on human dignity and autonomy demonstrates how much he valued individual rights and each person's inherent worth. Comparing Bentham's and Kant's ethical frameworks reveals that both provide useful insights into ethics and society. Bentham's utilitarianism offers a pragmatic approach to moral decision-making, emphasizing the significance of assessing the consequences of acts. However, its emphasis on promoting enjoyment can raise ethical concerns about individual treatment and minority rights. Kant's deontological ethics, on the other hand, highlight moral principles and persons' intrinsic value, laying a stronger foundation for ethical decision-making. Kant's ethics, which emphasize the importance of intention and universal moral principles, provide a persuasive alternative to Bentham's utilitarianism. To summarize, while both Bentham and Kant provide valuable insights on ethics and society, our debate has emphasized the strengths and shortcomings of each approach. Bentham's utilitarianism provides a practical and objective foundation for moral decision-making, but its emphasis on consequences can lead to ethical quandaries concerning individual rights. Kant's deontological ethics, on the other hand, emphasize moral principles and persons' intrinsic value, providing a more solid framework for ethical decision-making. Finally, the decision between these two frameworks is based on one's values and ideas about the nature of morality and the significance of individual rights in society.
Argues that moral actions are those performed out of a sense of duty and based on universal principles that apply to all rational beings. This approach prioritizes the inherent value of moral integrity and respects the autonomy of individuals, even if it means sacrificing short-term happiness or utility. On the other hand, Bentham's utilitarianism evaluates actions based on their consequences, aiming to maximize overall happiness or pleasure and minimize pain or suffering for the greatest number of people. While utilitarianism offers a pragmatic approach to ethical decision-making, critics argue that it can sometimes justify actions that violate individual rights or dignity if they lead to the, greatest overall happiness. In essence, Kant's framework provides a strong, formal, moral foundation rooted in principles of duty and respect for individual autonomy, whereas Bentham's utilitarianism focuses on the outcomes of actions and maximizing utility. Ultimately, the choice between the two depends on whether one prioritizes adherence to moral principles or the promotion of overall happiness. In conclusion, Kant's ethical framework emphasizes the intrinsic value of moral duty and the importance of acting from a sense of duty, regardless of consequences, while Bentham's utilitarianism prioritizes the maximization of overall happiness or pleasure. While both have their merits, Kant's approach provides a robust foundation for moral decision making rooted in universal principles, ensuring the respect for individual autonomy and dignity. Thank you.